Last speech, we made it. Now I want to start with a word we all think that we understand, useful. We use it every day. We use it to measure success, we use it to justify decisions and to defend our dreams. But rarely do we stop and ask, useful to whom? Useful for what? And what happens when things that give life meaning, like beauty, justice, imagination, aren't useful in the traditional sense? Now, I'm going to study humanities this September at the University of Toronto, which means that I'll be diving into philosophy, literature, and language, fields that aren't exactly famous for being marketable. I've lost count how many people have told me, so what are you going to do with that degree? It's always the same tone, polite concern mixed with confusion, like I've chosen to study candle making or wizardry instead of something more sensible. And I get it, we live in a world obsessed with results, with speed, with metrics, and we yearn for graphs and charts and proof. The usefulness. And if you can't plug it into a spreadsheet, people start to wonder if it has any value at all. But that obsession, that tunnel vision, it's exactly what makes the humanities not just relevant, but necessary. Let me tell you a story. I have a little brother. He's 8 years old, endlessly curious, and in his own words, definitely going to be a billionaire. He wants to start a business. He's not sure which one yet, but he's definitely sure that it's going to be the best one. So naturally, we nudge him towards math, finance, economics, coding. We hand him the tools of the trade because we want him to succeed in a world that rewards numbers. But recently I asked him why he wants to be rich. And he told me that he wants people to listen to him. Not saying, I want to buy a yacht, or I want to eat ice cream for dinner every night, though I'm very sure that he wants those things as well. He wants influence. He wants meaning. And those things aren't mathematical. Those are human. It starts in the soul and not in the stock market. And that's what the humanities help us navigate, not just how the world works, but why we want to shape it in the ways that we do. Now, this isn't a roast of STEM. We obviously need doctors and we obviously need engineers. They build the literal world that we live in, but sometimes I wonder who's building the inner world, asking the messy moral questions about what we build and why. A while ago, Oxford, the literal temple of Western academia, proposed cutting funding to its classics department, the very department that studies ancient philosophy and ancient languages and art. They said that it wasn't relevant enough, which meant they said that it wasn't useful. And that shook me because when institutions so historic as Oxford start calling centuries of human thought irrelevant, we should be deeply concerned. What they're really saying is stories don't matter, questions don't matter, and context doesn't matter. They're saying we should prioritize what can be monetized. But here's the thing, you can't build an app for morality. You can't 3D print empathy, and you can't understand where we're going if you don't know where we've been. Now let's go back to that word, useful. It sounds like a compliment, but often it's a cage. We hear it in classrooms, at jobs, and even at family gatherings. We tell kids to choose the smart option, the safe major, the secure path. But somewhere along the line, usefulness became synonymous with predictability. And anything outside that narrow frame became suspect. And that's the real myth that I want to debunk today, that the humanities are a soft option, a sentimental indulgence, and an aesthetic add-on to the real work. The humanities are not soft, they are sharp. They teach us how to argue, not to win, but to understand. How to read words, how not to just read words, but power, politics, nuance. They teach you how to listen to somebody's story and ask, what shaped this person, instead of, how do I fix them? They teach the art of interpretation, which frankly is a survival skill in a world that is increasingly loud, messy, and dishonest. And sure, my STEM friends can calculate the angle of a rocket's launch. But can they explain the intrinsic human need to explore? Can they recognize when innovation becomes exploitation? And sure, I cannot solve a quadratic equation, and I wouldn't know a polymer chain if it hit me in the face. And I'm not here to start a turf war between faculties, but I am here to say that usefulness should not be defined by how easily something becomes a product. Not everything that matters can be sold, and not everything that matters can be measured. I think back to my brother, still dreaming, still asking questions, and I realize even in his pursuit of success, what he really wants is connection, recognition, a story. And that is the gist of all of the humanities. We study what makes us human. We don't need less of that, we need so much more. So the next time somebody asks me, what are you going to do with that degree? I think I will say, I'm going to understand the whys of life. And yes, I'll probably ruin many a family gathering by quoting obscure philosophers, but that, to make a tech reference, is a feature, not a bug. To study the humanities is a commitment to discomfort, to questions with no easy answers. And it's not easy, it's not always practical, but it is deeply, undeniably useful. Thank you.